Okay, first, I'd like to welcome you to the 2017 iCare Connectathon Kickoff Webinar. We have two presenters today. We have Lynn Fellhofer. She's the lead technical project manager for IHE, and she manages and works in connectathons throughout all the healthcare space, including iCare. And then my name is Don Van Sickle. I'm president of DVS Consulting, and I am a consultant that works with the Academy and as part of IHE, and I also will be a project manager as part of the Connectathon. I'd like to welcome you today here to the kickoff meeting. The agenda. So the agenda is going to be a brief overview of the iCare profiles that we have, and then that'll be followed by a Q&A, and then we'll get into the more details of the specific Connectathon, the purpose, the preparation, the processes you need to follow, the schedule, and what you're going to need to know to be successful in the Connectathon this year, 2017. Before we get into the iCare profiles, we want to encourage you, if you have not been involved in this area, to actually view a set of webinars. So a few weeks ago, Peter Scherer from IFA and myself provided a more detailed webinar relative to the iCare profiles. And that can be seen in a link in a YouTube or at the IHE.net website, and if you follow this, you can get a more detailed discussion of the profiles, because we're not going to be able to cover that level, the same level as we did then as today. But I want to just let you know it definitely is there. But I'm going to give a quick summary for this presentation. So the first profile that will be tested at the Connectathon is called Unified iCare Workflow. Now, Unified iCare Workflow is really the ability to automate the workflow in a clinic, and that includes both ophthalmology and optometry. The workflow is always dealing with a couple important points. One is efficiency, and the other is patient safety, and it fits really all products. So if you are in the eye care space, your product really fits Unified iCare Workflow. Whether you're practice management, if you're an EMR, okay, a PACS, an image management system, display system, an imaging device, all those systems really play into this profile. Also, we've expanded the profile to deal with an XML stream relative to refractive devices. And that was expanded last year, and hopefully we'll see for the first time some testing this year relative to that. The standards inside of this workflow are going to be HL7, 2.5 messages, DICOM, and Joya. And just a quick note is that we had previous workflows that some of you may have participated in, like Advanced, Basic, and Core, and those workflows have been retired. And so we're not going to test those flows. Of course, some of those flows have been incorporated into Unified, but the reality is if you've not tested those, the new workflow, we really highly encourage you to do so. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to provide a brief overview of Unified iCare Workflow. Again, remember the more detailed presentation was presented a few weeks ago that I pointed to before. So what's important for you as a vendor that's going to participate in the Connectathon is to learn a couple of things. The first one is you need to pick what real-world model or models you want your product to participate in. And so what I'm going to do is just briefly cover those models and not get into the deep details. So as I mentioned before, it really covers all devices. So the workflow, of course, begins with a patient management system. You're going to input demographic data, appointment schedules, and that information will be passed to your EHR. Now, also as part of that is an optional feature to deal with billing. So what you need to do is you need to look at your products and look to see where you fit in these models. And you need to say, okay, yes, I'm a practice management system, excuse me, and I have the ability to pass on patient demographics and appointments to an EHR using HL7, and then voila, you fit. And so this is really the flow here. So you have to look at these models and determine where you fit. Of course, continuing the flow very quickly, you're going to get a DICOM patient list, which is called modality work list to the iCare device. The device is going to incorporate that automatically in the system, and it's going to, you push a button, and you have your patient demographics there, and then you'll store that data into a PACS image management system, and of course the ability to display the information. And so this is the typical flow that you'll see in Real World Model 1. Again, look at that model, look to see what your company fits, and when it does fit, then you need to want to participate for Real World Model 2. Or excuse me, 1. The second model, okay, deals with workflow, but there's three main differences here. The beginning starts the same. So one important point that I'm giving you a hint, if I'm a practice management system, I actually fit all these models because the flow starts out the same. So you actually would sign up for all three, even though it's the same way that you're going to incorporate with other vendors. This model here doesn't include a PACS archive. And so one of the main features is the EHR now raises the bar and is able to manage DICOM within their system. And so instead of actually having the images stored to a long-term archive, they're going to actually be sent back to an EHR, and the EHR is able to store and display that to the customer. They're able to incorporate it in their patient record. Now, one important point to understand here is if you do Real World Model 2, the EHR is not an archive. So it's not going to be there to be blasted with all your data as a iCare device. You have to have the ability to select the key images and reports. And so that's a separate capability that the iCare device has to be able to manage. And then because they're not connected to an archive. And also, of course, what happens is the device needs to work with the users of that organization to make sure they keep the information safe and they don't lose information that was developed because you don't have a PACS archive to take that responsibility. Okay. Now, Real World Model 3. Real World Model 3 looks very similar from a picture to the same as Real World Model 1, but there's one key and important difference. And the key difference is your EHR system does not support DICOM. So we have a flow that allows an EHR to process HL7 only. But what happens now is the image management or PACS system takes the load of the DICOM work list. And so the EHR does not understand DICOM, but it's able to do HL7. It sends HL7 orders, which include patient demographics, to the PACS system. And then the PACS system now will actually generate the DICOM modality work list. And so the PACS system has taken that ownership away from the EHR because they don't have that capability, and everything else flows the same. I create my data, I store it on the PACS, and then I have display systems. So as you can see here, and I realize this was a very brief review of these three real-world models, you need to look at your products, see where it fits within one of these models or more than one of these models, and that's how you will sign up eventually for the Connectathon. So please take a look at that in detail and find out where you live. As I mentioned before, we've added refractive measurements. So refractive measurements are based on the JOIA standard. And the JOIA stands for Japan Atomic Instruments Association. And the version for that standard that you need to look at is version 1.5. And so the type of devices that can be interacted here are going to be autorefractors, keratometers, lensometers, and more. Now this version is basically an XML stream that's going to be common for all refractive devices, and it really deals with two models. One model is where the refractive device is not able to understand or capture a patient ID, and then the second model is where it is able to do so, and the patient ID is captured within that system. So what happens now, again, we use version 1.5, and an XML specification for JOIA is based on data classifications. So you're going to have a data classification for each type of device. So you have one for refraction, so if you're doing a refraction meter, you have keratometry, and so on. And so what happens now is you're going to be able to generate those devices or those classifications and send this. Now, the refractive is really, the workflow for that is really pretty straightforward because it's really between nothing more but a refractive device and an EHR. and so the EHR is able to incorporate the devices inside of it. Again, please look at the longer presentation for more information. So the next part, so that's unified eye care workflow in a nutshell. And every product that really participates in the demonstration should either have already participated in this workflow or should participate in that workflow in the Connectathon, because it really fits all products within the system. The next topic I'd like to briefly talk about is the exchange of data between intra-office data exchange. And so what we have is we have the ability to actually exchange documents, and they're documents that are based on HL7 CDA, consolidated CDA architecture. Now, many of you know many government organizations have actually required systems to be able to support this architecture and these standards to be able to exchange data between offices. The difficulty for eye care is that these government-defined templates only use general healthcare related data. So it'll define things like medications, allergies, and problems, but it doesn't include anything specific for specialties such as eye care. So we don't have refractive measurements, we don't have IOP, we don't have visual acuity. So that's a problem to our users. So what we've done in IHE is we've added this data to those specifications. So you're able to actually utilize the work that you've done in the past relative to conform to the government regulations that maybe you've supported, and you're able to actually do that work, but now we can actually include extra information relative to eye care. And so there are two documents that we've generated to accomplish this. The first one is called General Eye Evaluation, or the acronym of G. And what we've done here is we've enhanced the progress note to capture the information you need for a patient's eye care visit. So now I can actually, for each visit for that patient, I can capture all the exam data that you've done relative to that patient in eye care, plus include the general information such as their allergies, medications, problem lists, and so on. And then the second document we've captured is the eye care summary. And so this is an enhancement of the continuity of care document. And again, what it does is it captures the general information that you have in the continuity of care, which the acronym is CCD, but it also then includes a capture of eye care summary of a patient. And this is a document that could be used, for example, if I want to refer a patient, or if I actually even want to help exchange patient records between one system to another. As I mentioned earlier, the G and the eye care summary are proper extensions to the HL7 CDA. So if you look at the figures down below, you see it's going to include the general information that is part of the consolidated CDA specifications, but it's going to add now things like ocular history, meds, visual acuity, IOP, refractive measurements, pupils, and more. And then you're also going to have the assessment and plan, and you're going to have eye care summary as part of here. So the whole goal here is the ability to conform to many of the government regulations that are out there that your systems may have already, and most of the systems have already been certified for, but then to include the extra eye care information that will help our users at a much higher level than just the general information. Now, one thing about these documents, again, it's just a brief explanation, is that these documents are human readable. And so one important point to understand is, even though, let's say you're an EHR that's very eye care specific and you're able to add all the eye care specific information, if you send this to a general EHR, they may not be able to import the eye care data because they may not have done the extra work that you did. But what happens is they're actually required to be able to display that human readable representation to a user. So even though maybe they're not able to incorporate it, they can display it. And that still helps our doctors to be able to understand the information inside of the system. Now, of course, if you're an eye care EHR, the real level that you want is to be able to incorporate that data. So now I can not only display it to my user, I can actually incorporate it as part of the patient record inside of my EHR. And so this is very useful in both scenarios. Sure, I'd rather be the more specific area where you can incorporate the data, but at a minimum, the doctors can be able to view and utilize the information from the eye care exam, remember, which is G, or an eye care summary. And so those are the data that we've defined to be able to communicate between inter-office data exchange. So where do you find this information? So what happens now is these specifications that we have are up defined on the IHE website, and there's a specific area for the technical frameworks for eye care, and there's also some general explanation on that website, and so you need to follow that. But also I want you, and Lynn is showing you that there on the presentation here, so you can see we have the IHE volumes 1 and 2, and then we also have supplements that are their trial implementation, which deal with some of our other features. And for example, the unified workflow refraction measurements is down below. So this is where you'll obtain the work. Now there's one exception here, and so I need to highlight that exception. For last year, we completed the work for G and eye care summary. However, we had a shortfall in the eye care summary because we were waiting for LOINC codes to be updated into the system. So we had requested LOINC codes to be created for our specification, and they hadn't been accomplished yet. Well, those LOINC codes have now been assigned by LOINC. And so what has happened now is we've actually updated that document with those LOINC codes. The problem is our timing. The timing is we haven't gone through the IHE process yet to be able to officially update the website to get that done. And we're kind of in a holding pattern because we're behind some other organizations. So the important point to understand now is that we actually have a newer version of the eye care summary. It's 99% the same, okay, but the difference is it's now incorporated the actual LOINC codes needed to implement that document. And so what has happened is Lynn has actually incorporated and uploaded the new information with the LOINC codes on the IHE Connectathon website that she'll talk about here, that you'll see here, and she'll talk about that later. So please, if you're doing the eye care summary, make sure you get those codes, and if you have a problem finding them, contact either Lynn or I to make sure you get the latest and greatest, and so you have those proper codes.
Whoops. Let me get up to the right slide here, sorry.
No
We're up to the question part. Yep.
Yes, so that's just a brief overview. I realize there's a lot more to what we do here with Unified Eye Care and also with the G and Eye Care summary documents. Please look at the longer seminar that Peter and myself presented a few weeks ago. And of course, you can ask questions now or ask us questions privately later. Anybody would like to ask a few questions?
And we'll also have opportunity for Q&A at the end.
Okay.
Okay, I'm going to continue, and if you haven't lost your chance to ask a question. So in the interest of time, I'm just going to continue, and again, we'll give you a chance at the end for any other follow-up. So we're going to shift gear now, and I'm going to talk about preparation for the Connectathon and what we do during the Connectathon. This will be a review for several of you who have been with us in past years, and hopefully new information for those of you who are joining. So in the interest of communication, one of my biggest challenges as a technical manager is to interact with you in a way that you can pay attention. And so we really have three mechanisms for keeping in touch with each other between now and the Connectathon. One is a Google group for email announcements. So when I send out reminders or share information about things that are going to happen between now and the Connectathon, we use an Connectathon Google group. If you were with us in the past, it's the same group, and you have already received emails from me. You can also use this link, which will be part of the slides that we distribute later, and you can actually join the group, or you can send me an email and I can add you to the group. We have a tool called Gazelle, which we use to help manage the testing process, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. And then I kind of want to have a one-stop shop Connectathon resources page, and I'll give you an overview of that. So everything you need to know should be on that third link: the schedule, a link to the documentation, a link to Gazelle, a link to the tools that we'll use. I tried to make that last resources page sort of a one-stop shop to find information that you need: my email address, Don's email address, etc. So I'd like to spend a few minutes talking about the Connectathon, and Don gave an overview of the profiles that are published by the IHE care domain. And the purpose of the Connectathon is to enable you to demonstrate your capabilities in one or more of those workflows. So for those of you who are new, you will need to map your capabilities to the IHE profiles and actors within those profiles. And if you're brand new to IHE and you have not read the profiles yet, that can be a challenge. And both Don and I want to offer ourselves as a resource to you in the coming weeks as you think about your participation in the Connectathon. Because in order to register, you need to be able to declare the profiles that you support and the actors and the real-world models where your product fits. And if you're unable to do that mapping, sometimes a 30-minute conversation with either Don or me can really facilitate that process rather than having you dig through the documentation. We're not telling you not to read the documentation, but we're happy to facilitate that process. So during the Connectathon itself, you will be playing the role of one or more profiles and actors, and you will be testing with vendor partners who play the opposite roles, the opposite side of transactions between those. And we will run through tests that I write based on the specification, and essentially you demonstrate your compatibility with your partners based on the IHE specification. This isn't certification, so if you find a bug on Monday, Tuesday, you go back to your hotel, you fix it during the day, and you retest. So it really is an iterative, supportive process where we work as partners rather than competitors to demonstrate our capabilities based on IHE profiles. So the beginning of the week is running through tests and demonstrating compatibility. And then sort of toward the end of the week, the last day and a half or so, we sort of shift our focus to prepare and practice for the demonstration. Not all Connectathon participants participate in the demonstration, although I'm sure Don and Flora would certainly encourage you to do so. But we still continue our testing, but we shift our profile or our focus to demonstration preparation. And the key goal here is to find and fix problems in your products and demonstrate compatibility. And also from time to time, we find something in the profile that needs to be updated. And so we're proving the compatibility both in the profiles and the IHE products. So I mentioned earlier that we have a web-based tool called Gazelle, and we're going to take a look at it in a minute. Gazelle is a software program that models the IHE profiles, so it knows about the profiles, actors, options, and transactions between the actors in the profile. So those are models in the Gazelle database. It has validation tools for some capabilities embedded in the system, and a list of tests based on those profiles. So when you register for the Connectathon, which is your task in the next week and a half, you will essentially describe your product in Gazelle and tell us through the registration process which profiles, actors, and options you support. And then Gazelle will match your capabilities with tests and partner you up with people who have essentially compatible capabilities. You'll run a test, you'll enter evidence, and Don and I spend the week observing your results, taking a look at your capabilities, and evaluating those against the requirements in the profile, and we do that in an iterative way throughout the week. So at the end of the week, we being IHE, both IHE International and the Academy, publish the results of profile actor pairs that you have successfully tested. We do not do any publishing of failures. So we have often in the past have had participants join us with works in progress. So you know you have sort of 80% of a capability. You want to test that out. You haven't quite implemented the entire thing. We encourage you to do that. So nobody's going to say that you passed these 3 things and failed the other. The IHE results are only things that you successfully test. People will, so this is sort of a little asterisk, but you know, passing the Connectathon isn't a guarantee of conformance. We don't have 100% coverage on the test requirements in the test, but certainly this is an extraordinary testing opportunity that really you can't match with test data in your test lab. So we the people who've come for many years have benefited from that testing opportunity. So what do I do to register for and prepare for the Connectathon? So again, Don said there are IHE capabilities and you need to match your product capabilities to the IHE profiles, and that's really the decision and evaluation that you need to perform now. There's a registration step that actually signs you up, and we're going to walk through that. And then between now and October, the end of October, you will complete technical preparation that essentially gets you ready so that you're not just testing cold when you arrive at the Connectathon location in October. So we have a few pre-Connectathon technical tasks that we ask you to perform. Let's talk first about registration. Again, I'm going to show you Gazelle. If you've been part of Gazelle before, you will recognize this, but let me just break away from the presentation right now and show you. I'm not going to go through a complete demonstration of the registration process. If you are a returning participant, this is a refresher. If you are new, what I would like to encourage you to do is contact me, and I'd like to set up about a 20-minute phone call, a WebEx, to actually walk through the registration process for you. It's not that it's that difficult, but it's an opportunity for me, if you're new, to get to know you and to walk you through a tool that you're not familiar with, so that you don't have to struggle. Just a brief reminder: if you are a returning volunteer, your account from last year or previous year still works. There's a sign-in button in the upper right-hand corner. If you're a brand new user, you have to create an account. On the sign-in page, if you forgot your password because it's been a long time, there's this retrieve a lost password, and as long as you remember either your login name from last year or the email account that you used, you can retrieve your lost password. If you get stuck, send me an email and I can help you get in. When you log in, if you were with us last year, Gazelle remembers that you've been with us before, and your background is going to look purple, and it's going to remember that you tested with us in 2016. And the most important thing that you're going to do is to say, this isn't 2016 anymore, and you're going to do switch and you're going to switch to the 2017 session, which is right on the top of the list. So you're going to say, nope, now it's 2017. And we purposely changed the color background. So if you're looking at purple, you're looking at 2016. We have a red background for this year. And the current session is always displayed on the top, and you can always switch back and forth. If you are a brand new user, when you log in for the first time, you're automatically going to be in 2017 and don't have to worry about that switching. And just a reminder, and again, I'm not going to go through the whole process here, but to register your system, and your system essentially, Gazelle calls it a test system. This is your product. Your registration will go under this registration menu in the upper left, and you're going to say Manage Systems. And here you will add a test system, or if you were with us in previous years and you have similar capabilities, you can actually pull your test system forward from a previous system, from 2016, and it's going to remember all the actors and profiles that you supported last year. When you add a system, you're going to be prompted for a system name, a version, you're going to be the owner, and then after you give your system a name, and that can be your product name, then you will be prompted to add profile and actors to that system. So again, if you're brand new, I'm going to encourage you to contact me. You're welcome to use Gazelle on your own, but if you run into problems, I'm happy to walk through the process with you. So let's continue with the presentation. Wants to go here. So the registration steps, our registration deadline is next Friday. I think it's the 25th. So you'll create a user account if you don't already have one. Every user account is connected with a company. So that ensures that when you log into Gazelle, you see your company's information and you are segregated from the information about other companies except from the testing context. You will enter the profile actor options that your system supports and save that information. And it's really representing your profiles and actors in the system that we call system registration. Later on, we're going to ask you in September to tell us who is going to come, the people. That's called staff registration. Don't worry about that now. I'll prompt you to do that later in September. And then there's a contract and fees that are due to Flora later in November. So we actually went through the how to, at least those preliminary steps already. So after you finish your registration, we're going to ask you to do a little bit of preparation just to make sure that the time that we spend together in October is optimal. So if you are a creator, if you are a device that creates DICOM images, we will ask you to provide samples of those in advance. We collect those on the AAOFTP site. Those who store those samples get a chance to test with those in advance. If you provide HL7 messages, you can also provide samples of those in advance. Again, if you're doing patient registration or ordering, it helps your test partners if they can see the output of your systems prior to that. And thirdly, if you're creating some of those consolidated CDA documents, the G or the EC summary as a content creator, even if your development is a works in progress, if you can provide those samples and your peer consumers are able to test those in advance of the Connectathon, that's to everybody's benefit. So we try to collect those before September 27th, and there's a place in Gazelle, a samples area, we call it, those are called samples, where you can upload those samples. And I'll provide training on how to upload those samples after the registration period ends. So if you're able to provide those by the end of September, then the first 2 weeks of October, your test partners are able to grab those samples out of Gazelle and test with their own products in their own lab, or verify those samples against existing tools. We have tools for verifying some of those samples. And again, that helps everything run more quickly. We ask you to share your configuration parameters. These are things like DICOM AE titles, listening ports. Gazelle has a place for you to tell, to upload that information. So again, your test partners can configure their systems to receive your information prior to the Connectathon. We do that in advance because otherwise on Monday we sort of lose half a day with people configuring their systems to talk to each other. And then I'll provide a link to the Connectathon test definition so that you will know what test steps you're going to have to perform with your partners, and you're not reading those for the first time when you arrive at the Connectathon location. And why do we do this? It's really helpful to identify and correct software problems that you might find by testing with these in advance. And we found that people who pay attention to this have a little bit easier week during the Connectathon. So we have a list of pre-Connectathon tests, and there are really 3 different types. One is the sample exchange I talked about. There'll be a test in Gazelle that tells you to upload your DICOM sample, upload your consolidated CDA sample, so that your partners have a chance to download those. We will, actually it'll be me prior to the Connectathon, we'll take a look at those and examine your sample, either using a tool like a DICOM evaluator or through manual inspection in the cases where we don't have a tool. And if I find a problem, I can let you know about that in advance of the Connectathon. And I've talked a little bit about samples. Again, we have 3 different kinds here, and depending upon the kind of sample that we have, we may have tools. So for example, in HL for DICOM objects, we have tools that can do the evaluation, but many of the messages defined in Unified Eye Care Workflow are newly defined last year, and we don't have message validators yet, but it's still possible to do manual inspection of those samples. We have 2 sets of test tools that are available to you, and they sort of fall into 2 categories. They're validators. Again, we have some validation tools for DICOM images, none that are specific to the consolidated CDA documents, although we do have test tools that can verify the base CCDA without the eye care extension. We also have some simulators. So we have a tool called Order Manager that can be a modality worklist provider for your device if you're someone who can like a device that, or an acquisition modality that does modality worklist. We have an Order Manager tool that allows you to test with that. We also have a patient manager tool that does ADT messages. You may find this useful for some testing, but we don't have the eye care specific extensions in that tool today. Some of you may, if you've been with us for a long time, have the old MESA tool. Those are nearing retirement, and I've deliberately crossed those out. We don't ask new vendors to use those. Those may be beneficial for people who've used them in the past, but if you haven't used those, they're no longer maintained, and we don't encourage you to use those anymore. So I will be providing training and different hints for tasks that are coming in the future. We're not going to provide those today, but just so you know that we'll prepare you to be successful using Gazelle as the coming weeks go on. So as I wrap up, I'm going to encourage you again to sign up for the Google group. My email and Don's email is there. You may, if you aren't on the Google group right now, you may want to chat, grab those email addresses now so that you can contact us, and then we can make sure that you're on the distribution when we send out the link to the presentation and the slides. I'm going to break away now, and I really wanted to show you that Connectathon resources webpage, and I'm going to put a link to this in the chat if I can find that. So that you can grab this, because really this is my, oops, nope, I didn't get it. Hold on 1 second. Oh yeah, so if you look in the chat now, you'll find a link to this page. The first thing I want to tell you is that there's a login and password on the left-hand side. There is no need to log in here. This is purely an information page. That login here is really for administrative users. So there's a few sections here, and I just want to show you what's here. We're not going to read everything. The first section is a pointer to all the documentation. So for you, iCare, Volume 1, Volume 2, the JOIA standard, and the refractive measurements, essentially these links are going to take you to IHE.net. But we wanted one-stop shopping. For iCare summary, Don mentioned that the newer version isn't on IHE.net yet, but it's here. So there's a small update to add those blank codes. If you follow this link, you'll get that. This will be essentially published on IHE.net in the coming weeks, but we don't want to wait for you. There's two versions here, actually. The main link contains one with change accepted, but if you want to see the deltas from last year, there's a change track version that's also linked here. And again, the GE supplement is the same as what we used in 2016, and that information is there. There's a logistics section that talks about the location. So we have the Connectathon at the Radiological Society of North America. Oak Brook is about a 15-minute drive from O'Hare Airport in Chicago. My email, Don's email, and Flora's contact information is here. A link to the Google group that I referred to is here. You can send me an email and I'll add you to the listserv. We encourage you to stay at the Residence Inn. There's a room block set aside. It's about a 2-minute walk right down a little street to the Connectathon location. And there's a link here where you can make your hotel reservation. We'll provide, if you're going to ship equipment, we'll provide that information here. The complete schedule is here. Here's the registration link. Here's our webinar. I'll post the slides and recording here. All the dates are here with links. Again, I'm not going to walk through those here. Our Connectathon week schedule is Monday through Thursday at noon. So we have a couple out, about an hour and a half of setup time, and then mid-morning we actually start testing. Monday, Tuesday is dedicated to Connectathon testing, and sort of Wednesday afternoon we sort of do that transition to the demonstration for AAO. And then further down on the page are things you're going to need later, code tables, Connectathon test review. Sort of the things you need first are up on top, and then at the very bottom of the page are some training information, how-to information, things that I will point you to. So I'm going to stop now just to make sure that we have time for questions. This is the group from last year and a screenshot from our Connectathon last year, and we sure hope that your staff is in this picture that we take next year, and I look forward to working with all of you. So we have a few minutes for questions for either Don or me.
Awful quiet.
So I will say that some of you may have questions that you don't want to ask in a larger group, and I'm actually going to go back to the slide that has the contact information. Both Don and I welcome your outreach to get you into this process. Don works with the technical committee and planning committee and is the best resource to you as far as your questions about how your product fits into the different use cases. I know that information, but Don knows it better because he works with more closely with the vendors. When it comes to Gazelle and testing and test descriptions and tools and stuff, I'm your person there. So to get you through that registration process in Gazelle, you should reach out to me.
Okay.
Okay.
So thank you everybody for attending. We hope to see many or all of you at the Connectathon this year, and we look forward to working with you again and having success for all of us. Thank you.
Yep. Thanks for your participation. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye now.